What are the most significant challenges facing the gas detection industry today? And what are the best ways of overcoming these issues? I think probably some of the biggest challenges now is that this marketplace has become quite populated with many other companies, which is not a problem. Monopoly is not a good thing. There needs to be lots of people in the industry so that you all learn and you move on and you learn how to do things better. So it is good to have challenges and it's good to have competitors. The problem comes about is when people come into this industry and they don't know what they're doing. Many times I've seen installations whereby people are putting sort of let's say an LPG detector up high at the top of a ceiling when LPG is heavier than air and it should be fitted low to the ground. And the client says, well, the system's never gone off, it's never caused us any problems. Well, the system will never go off and it will never cause you problems because it's detecting at the wrong place. So, I mean, those are big issues. And the problem with people in doing bad installations or incorrect installations with gas detection is that there's a huge danger involved because flammable gases will ignite in certain criteria. So if there's enough gas and there's enough heat or ignition and enough oxygen at the same time, then there could be an explosion. And if sensors are being fitted in the wrong places, then if there is all of those three things that are available, a sensor's not going to do what it's supposed to be doing. So it is very important that whoever uses a gas detection company or a company that is supplying, designing, and installing gas detection systems is that that company knows what they're doing. Now, unfortunately, at the moment, there are no regulations specifying a company can do gas detectors or install gas detectors. So we have set up the Gas Detection Association of South Africa, which is a starting block where we want to get that. We're going to work with the Department of Labour and get that association into an SAQCC association where we don't know yet. It is these things take a long time. So far, it's been about 5 years and we're still nowhere. But we need to find a place to put the association. So then we can have training courses built up and installers can be certified and then the jobs will be done correctly. And at the end of an installation, the installer will give his certified card to the client to say, I know what I'm doing, I've done what is supposed to be done, and this job complies with all regulations. So I think currently that's probably the biggest problem we're facing in the industry, that companies are trying to get in an industry that they don't know enough about. They may have an idea about fire, but fire is very different to gas. And thus it's quite dangerous. There are many fire systems where you use sampling pipe. So you'll have a fire panel, you will run a conduit up on a roof, and that has holes in the conduit and it sucks the smoke back to a panel. And you can add on gas detectors to that system. And that can be a good idea of doing things. The problem occurs is that these pipes are always on the ceiling, generally, to pick up smoke. And if you've got a gas which is heavier than air, then again, that system's never going to detect the gas which is low to the ground. The other issue, using an aspirated system, which is what I've just described, a fire aspirated system, is that they have many holes along a pipeline. And if you're sucking up gas through all of these holes, by the time it gets back to the panel where the sensor is, your gas has dispersed and is no longer at the level it was when you're detecting it. You need to have, when you're detecting gas using an aspiration system or a sampling system, you must have only one point of where it's going to sample, not many points. Because if you have many points, you're bringing air in and the gas in, and then the gas is not at the level it should be when it gets back to your panel. You should be aware, especially with Wi-Fi technology, there are certain things that you need to make sure that are in place. So if you're fitting a device, generally, if you're using Wi-Fi, so you've got a transmitter and a receiver, okay, you need to be aware that you generally need line of sight. So if you've got sensors at a bulk tank and you need to get it back to the signal back to security, and you've got a big warehouse in the middle, then you're probably not going to get your signal through because it needs to be line of sight. So in that case, you'll probably have to take your receiver up high from the bulk tank, and your transmitter up high from the bulk tank, and your receiver high from your security over the warehouse so that there is line of sight. You also have to be aware that there are distances involved. So you might not be able to go a kilometer. You might be able to only do sort of 100 meters. And then you may need to have boosters along the line to send your signal further along. So you've got to plan these things carefully. You can't just go in and plonk things in there. You may then decide, I can't go above this warehouse, I have to go around it. Still line of sight. So you have to look at the whole job as a complete job and then work out the best way of doing this. You may find that you won't get the signal there, and you may have to decide to do it, okay, well, I'm going to send the information up into the cloud, and then we'll have a laptop in security that can connect to the cloud and receive that information. So those are certain aspects that you might have to be aware of before you finish or complete a job, so that it works for the customer, and that you have to be aware it's not the product's fault, it's how we install the product. So you have to ask the client what are their requirements and their needs, because the client may need the equipment, but they may not understand what it can or can't be done. So the client may say, I need 4 different gases to be detected. Give me a sensor for that. Okay, sir. You can't have 4 different gases in one sensor. Okay. So you have to have 4 different sensors. And also, you can't just have one sensor when you're detecting gases that are lighter or heavier than air, because the sensor has to be installed somewhere. And if you're installing it high and you've got gases that are heavier, then it's not going to work. So you can potentially find some sensors that have dual heads, and that they will detect maybe you might have in car parks, you can get sensors that will detect CO and NO2 for diesel. And one head could be lower than the other so that you can detect both of them. So you have to have a look and see what your client's requirements are. And then have a look and see what products there are out there that will work for your client, and give them what they need, rather than giving them something that is not required or is not what they need. So that's a quick basis of the sensors. Then you have to look and see the environment. Okay, where is this sensor going? It's going outside. Okay, so the sensor has to have an IP rating. you can't put an IP44 sensor, which is, let's say, a domestic sensor for your home, outside in the rain, because it's not going to work for very long. You're then going to give the sensor manufacturer a bad name. You're going to have a bad name. The industry is going to have a bad name, and the customer is not going to be very happy. So you have to have a look and see, okay, it's outside. Okay, so I need to have an IP65 and IP66 sensor. Is anything going to hit it? Are there forklifts driving around? Are there people is there movement? Do I need to put a bracket over it to make sure that sensor is safe? And then you have to have a look at that as well. You can put sensor brackets over sensors to make them safe. Is the environment zoned? So you get different zonings. You get a zone 0, you get a zone 1, and a zone 2. And then you can subdivide those even more. And is that zoning an explosion-proof environment? Because if it is, then you can't just put a sensor that is an IP66 sensor. You've got to put an EX sensor in there, or an IS, which is intrinsically safe. And also, an EX sensor has different classifications as well. EXD, EXE, etc. It's quite a complex environment. So you have to understand your environment to put in the right product and to make sure that it complies with the zoning, it complies with the weather, it complies with protection, it complies with the right gas that you want to detect. There's no point putting an EX sensor in a classroom in a lab in a university which doesn't need it. That would be an overkill. So you have to have a look and see what is the required coverage you need, and you give the client the right product for the right thing. TLM, for example, we have lots of companies that we will bring the goods in for. So we will look at the right product for the customer at the right price and make sure the customer will get the right equipment for them, and it's not going to break the bank, and is going to give them it at the price they require for the system. TLM has been expanding its range of products, and the reason is behind this is that, for example, we were asked to supply hydrocarbon cable for detection in a fuel terminal depot to detect hydrocarbons in the fuel terminal. We have come across these products which will detect hydrocarbons in the air and send that information back to a panel. And this is very exciting and opens up many areas in the petrochemical industry and the fuel terminal environments where this can be done. We have just won a tender in Namibia to install this, and we are looking to install this type of device in many other fuel terminals within Africa. So that's a very exciting prospect and opens up many areas. You can add flame detection to this, as well as there can obviously be fixed gas detectors. So that's a very exciting new field for us with this hydrocarbon cable.